This is the second video on Reconstruction. Again, Reconstruction is a period that followed the U.S. Civil War. Southern states had to be readmitted into the Union. The war-torn economies had to be rebuilt, and the emancipated free men and women had to be incorporated. Bet you already knew that. After 4 years of war and over 200 years of slavery, could Northerners and Southerners rebuild the South together? A lot of questions were in the air. How should the South be rebuilt? How should former slaves be incorporated into the country as freed men and women? How should the states that seceded be readmitted into the Union? How should those states be treated? How to address the many challenges of former slaves? Should Southern secessionists be recognized as citizens? Should they be punished? How would freed men and women be treated in the South? As we try to answer these questions, we will focus on our essential questions. 1. What issues divided Republicans during the early Reconstruction era? And 2. How radical were the radical Republicans? We will take a look at 3 different Reconstruction plans: Abraham Lincoln's plan, Andrew Johnson's plan, and the Congressional or Radical Republican plan. Yes, even before the end of the war and Lincoln's death, he had already set out some plans for Reconstruction. Abraham Lincoln's plan. Lincoln's plan for readmitting Southern states was also called the 10% plan. Lincoln had lenient plans for Reconstruction. He believed that secession had no legality, so states should be forgiven and not punished. Lincoln wanted to end the war and strengthen the Union as soon as possible. Lincoln proposed to readmit states back into the Union if 10% of that state's voters pledged allegiance to the Union, and states accepted the Emancipation Proclamation. Once the states drafted new constitutions, they could be readmitted back into the Union. His plan was rejected by Congress. Congress thought that Lincoln had not been harsh enough with Confederate leaders and seceding states. Lincoln's plan for former slaves was not far-reaching enough. Lincoln wanted to consolidate the Emancipation Proclamation and used it as a condition to readmit states. The 13th Amendment was passed in January 1865, abolishing slavery in all states permanently. Lincoln supported and quickly signed the bill creating the Freedmen's Bureau, which helped former slaves to obtain land, education, food, and supplies. Lincoln was not ready to give African Americans full civil rights. His priority was to welcome back the former Confederate states into the Union. Lincoln was shot and died before any of his plans could be carried out. Andrew Johnson's plan. Andrew Johnson was a former slave owner and senator from the states of Tennessee who had remained loyal to the Union. Johnson had only been vice president for a little over a month when he became president after Lincoln's death. Even though it was believed that Johnson would impose harsh conditions for states to be readmitted into the Union, Johnson's plan for readmitting states ended up being more relaxed and lenient than Lincoln's. Johnson refused to issue a general pardon to former Confederate leaders. Each leader had to personally request amnesty. Soon, Johnson was issuing thousands of pardons to former Confederates, allowing them to regain their properties and their rights as citizens of the United States. Johnson wanted reconciliation between Northern and Southern states, and rushed to readmit states back into the Union, even if it meant recognizing governments were made up almost exclusively of former Confederate leaders. For this reason, Johnson came under suspicion of being too sympathetic to the South and had to face enormous opposition from Northerners and in Congress. His plans for former slaves lacked depth and force. Johnson did not consider African Americans to be on equal terms with whites. Johnson vetoed the Civil Rights Act that would guarantee equality to African Americans, as well as a bill to enlarge the Freedmen's Bureau. Congress overrode his veto, and both bills became federal law. Southern states passed laws to limit and deny rights and freedoms of African Americans. States passed black codes, laws based off slave codes that defined freedmen as persons of color, and prevented them from voting, serving as juries, testifying against whites, and serving in the militia. In addition, black codes made it illegal for blacks to travel and leave their jobs at will. The main purpose of black codes was to keep the structure of slavery alive as much as possible. Johnson believed that the federal government should not intervene in this matter. So Johnson started issuing thousands of pardons to former Confederate leaders, allowing them to form governments that in turn passed black codes, restricting the rights of the former slaves. For this reason, Congress impeached him, but failed to remove him from office. Radical Republicans' plan. Who is radical? Radicals intend to transform or replace the fundamental principles of a society or a political system through social or structural change, revolution, or radical reform. The Radical Republicans' plan was harsher on Confederate leaders and imposed more conditions for state readmission. Radical Republicans hoped to control the Reconstruction efforts to transform Southern society. Radical Republicans believed that the South needed to be punished for causing the war and believed that presidential plans for Reconstruction, first Lincoln's, then Johnson's, were very lenient. Radical Republicans passed their own Reconstruction plan. They did not recognize states readmitted by Lincoln or Johnson. Congress also divided the U.S. into 5 military-occupied districts. To be readmitted into the Union, states should ratify the 14th Amendment and get rid of all former Confederates from their governments. Under the Congressional Plan, the South was militarized and divided into 5 districts. Radical Republicans' plan. Radical Republicans believed that former slaves should receive full civil and political rights, including the right to vote. For Congress, granting and protecting those rights was a federal matter. Southern states had to stop abridging and suppressing the rights of freedmen. Radical Republicans were crucial in passing a Civil Rights Act, prohibiting discrimination based on race and overturning black codes. These ideas were written into the Constitution with Amendments 14, which guarantees citizenship rights, and 15, which guarantees voting rights.
Disclaimer. The following show is entirely fictional and is not even historically accurate. Its only academic purpose is to portray and compare the different views of our guests on Reconstruction. Historical discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Reconstruction Show. Tonight we have President Lincoln, President Johnson, and representing Radical Republicans, Congressman Theda Stevens. Let's start with the first question. Who should be in charge of Reconstruction? The President. The President. Congress. Next question. Should seceded states be punished? No, we should be lenient and forgive them. I bet you thought I would say we should be harsh. But no, we just need to get this over with as soon as possible. All former Confederates should be punished. Next question. What should be the process of readmitting states back into the Union? We'll just have 10% of their voters pledge allegiance to the Union. That's enough. Just swear allegiance to the Union, write a state constitution, and form a government. That's it. States should start by ratifying the 14th Amendment. Then they should get rid of all the Confederates from their governments and give blacks full political and civil rights. It's not that difficult. Next question. Should former slaves have the right to vote? Not right now. I'll pass. Next question. Yes, they should have political and civil equality. And the winner is Congressman Stevens, representing Radical Republicans. A few words, Congressman? I want to thank my fellow Radical Republicans and my constituents. I could have not done it without them. Congress will not recognize states readmitted by Lincoln and Johnson. We will come up with our own plan. Divide the South into 5 districts, send in the military, and ask states to make real changes before being readmitted. That's all our time for tonight. Good night. Stay tuned, coming up next, the fight of the century. Welcome to the fight of the century! 19th century, that is. Tonight, President Andrew Johnson will fight Congressman Thaddeus Stevens, representing Radical Republicans. And we start. Radicals take the first hit. Oh no! Congress passes a bill to enlarge the Freedmen's Bureau and the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which forbids states to pass black codes and guarantees rights for African Americans. Johnson is quick. He blocks them both with a veto. Wait! Radicals were expecting this and react quickly. They override the veto and pass both bills anyway. Radicals seem to be really pumped tonight. Congress uses Civil Rights Act to write the 14th Amendment to Constitution, and the states ratify it. Johnson is on the ground. Another hit for Johnson. Radicals just swept through and won big in the midterm elections and take control of Congress. Johnson is not standing up yet. Johnson's back up, but he looks weak. Radical Republicans passed their own Reconstitution plan. Johnson was already expecting this hit. He quickly vetoes that plan. Well, we already know how this is gonna go. Yes, just as predicted. Congress boldly overrides that veto. The South will be divided in districts and militarized. Radicals are preparing for a final blow. Yes! Radicals move to impeach President Johnson. Johnson's so impeached, but will radicals succeed in removing him from office? Oh no! That was close. Johnson stays in office. I can't believe this! They were so close! Just missed by 1 vote. President Johnson has had enough. He finishes his term and decides not to run for re-election. It's a clean win! General Ulysses S. Grant, the Civil War hero, is elected as the new President of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner! But only for now. I have a feeling things will change soon. From Washington, D.C., that's all for tonight. Thank you for watching.
Disclaimer. The purpose of this event is to show the fierce opposition of radical Republicans to President Johnson's handling of Reconstruction. No historical characters were actually fighting. Violence is never the answer.